So almost 5 years ago, I left a coding bootcamp, and it's mad to say that, and now I'm a senior software engineer. I've put my time into the industry. I'm now a senior software engineer working on some really cool projects. And I wasn't planning to make this video. Over the years, if you watch my channel, you will know that I've helped mentor hundreds of people to do the same because I was a career changer. I came into the industry when I was 30 through the whole coding bootcamp and self-taught developer route. And I promised myself when I came into the industry, I was going to help whoever I could do the same. And thankfully, over the years, I've developed one of the biggest junior developer focused meetups in the UK. I've launched a junior developer survival guide, which is a newsletter, link in the comments. I've recently launched a developer careers academy where I'm helping career changers and bootcamp developers and graduate developers break into the industry with CV reviews, interview prep, live coaching calls. So the whole point of this video really is to answer the question that I always get. Well, what's your story? You're so busy helping other people, we don't know what your story is. So I'm going to go over where I am now. I'm going to go over my career progression over the last 5 years. I'm going to go over the bootcamp aspects, why I did it, and would I do it again. I'm going to go over how I would do it all again if I had to now. A lot of you may be in that position. And then I might go over some extra bits like the industry as a whole right now and whether it's been worth it for me so far. By the way, if you do want to ask any questions, feel free to leave comments and I will answer them because I might not cover everything you want to know in this video. Okay, to start with, where am I now? Well, as you know, I've said I'm a senior software engineer, and it's it's mad to say that because I've just started at a new company. I'm 2 weeks in, and there's always that feeling when especially when you're a self-taught developer, of am I good enough? And I did the interview for this job at senior software engineer level, and they offered me the job. There was no favors involved. I had to do the tech test, I had to do the behavioral, I had to do the whiteboarding, and they offered me the senior software engineer role, not just at like a bottom level, but at the top level of senior software engineer. So it really answered that question for me of, am I now a senior software engineer? Do I have the skills to be a senior software engineer? Because, you always feel like an imposter. You feel imposter syndrome. So over the last 5 years, I've had three roles this is my fourth job in the industry. I've worked as a mobile developer for a bank. I've worked as a full stack software engineer. I've worked in data engineering, and now I'm back into sort of full stack engineering. And it's a fantastic place to be. It's a great feeling to be where I am. So in terms of career progression, my first 2 years, which was my first two jobs in the industry, I started off as a junior, obviously, as a mobile developer. That was a terrible job, terrible experience. I didn't learn anything, but it forced me into a position where I had to take control of my own learning. I had to learn how to control my own career progression. I had to learn how to focus out, how to plan out what I wanted my career to look like, what I wanted my learning to look like. And I realized after about 6 to 8 months, I'm not going to make the progression here that I thought I was going to make. So I made a move into the next company, which was a full stack development role, building web apps and software. That was a fantastic experience. Again, I learned a lot. I took what I learned about planning my own sort of career progression, knowing my worth, and learning the skills that I needed to progress in the industry. I'd say the real growth happened was at the last company I was at. I was there for 3 years. I really managed to stick in, develop my technical skills, but then I started to focus a lot on my business skills. So what are my skills to the business? And I needed to focus on this to become a senior software engineer. I needed to ask a lot of why questions. Why are we building this? Or what questions? What's the benefit of what we're doing? How questions. How is this going to make us money? Or how is it going to save us time? And these were the questions that I started asking around the software we were building, which really propelled me to understand software, not just in terms of the code, but in terms of the impact, the tangible impact on the company, on the customer, and how we justify making the decisions to what we build and what we don't build. And these are all things that I impart in my group coaching calls, the wisdom that I teach people, how to understand the impacts of where you work, how you work, the questions you ask. So in terms of salary progression, because I'm sure some of you are way interested in that, in the first few years you start low. I was like between 20 and 30,000 a year. The main growth I got was when I sort of hit the mid-level, where it's about 50k in UK money, GBP, for those who don't know. Each job I took was more or less a 30% increase, and now as a senior, it's up there close to six figures. It's not over six figures, but I do work with and know software engineers who are on over six figures. It's not as uncommon as people would make you believe. The people who don't believe you can make six figures in the UK as a software engineer are usually the ones who don't really progress or network or look for the opportunities where those positions are. And trust me, they are out there. Now, should money be a driver? No, of course not. It shouldn't be a driver. But as a career changer, it is part of your dream, unfortunately. There's absolutely no shame in that. You do want to earn good money. That's why you get into this industry, where you have to learn the skills that you've never had before, and you have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions. So the money does pay well. I'm not going to lie to you all. If that's one of the reasons why you're getting into the industry, fantastic. But you also have to be somebody who's passionate about problem solving, who's passionate about taking on challenges, because when the times get tough, people who are just in it for the money drop out. People who are in it because they want to solve problems and live that lifestyle will carry on. So since the bootcamp, obviously I've talked about my career progression, I've talked about the money, but there's something else that I want to talk about, which is all the community impacts I've had. So over the last 5 years, I first started with the juniordeveloper.careers, which was the #1 job board for junior developer jobs in the UK. Now that's since gone down a little bit. I didn't focus on it as much because I launched the junior developer meetups in Manchester, which is the busiest meetup in Manchester. We get hundreds of people in attendance. I've launched the junior developer survival guide newsletter, which goes out to 1,000 junior developers a few times a week. I've also recently launched the Developer Careers Academy, where I do live coaching calls every week. I help people from self-taught bootcamp and university backgrounds break into tech through CV reviews, CV courses, behavioral interview courses, live coaching and mentoring calls on very important aspects. So last week the coaching call was based on interview prep. This week it's going to be around making an impact on your first week in a new job. The week before last week we also had a transferable skills workshop from an expert in the industry, and at the end of December we're having a branding and networking masterclass from a very, very big well-known tech recruiter in Manchester. So that's where I am now, my sort of career progression and my community level work. But what about the bootcamp? Did I take away from it, and would I go on it again 5 years later? So bear in mind, some of this will be survivorship bias, right? There are people who've gone through it who haven't made it as far as I've made it. So what I'm talking about now is based on me and my experience. I can't really speak for anybody else. Well, I can speak for hundreds of people who have helped, but I can't speak for everyone. So the #1 reason I actually went on a coding bootcamp those years ago is that in 2019, there weren't that many people on them. They were paid, then I had to pay for it myself. But they could guarantee a job interview. And I know at 30, when I went through a career change as a self-taught developer, if I wanted to compete against people who were 21, 22, trying to break into tech, it was never going to happen unless I had an opportunity. So I paid to go on the bootcamp. Essentially, I paid for a job interview. That's how I viewed it. That's the way I went through it. That's the only reason I went on it. There's nothing on a coding bootcamp that you can't learn yourself online for free. If you want to go on it for structured reasons, obviously, then that's fine. I've got tons of videos on my channel about boot camps, about what you should look for a good boot camp, about whether it's worth it, and etc., etc. Do I think it is worth it? Technically, no. There's nothing, like I said, you can learn. In terms of getting the job, yes. But it's different today because they can't guarantee those interviews anymore. There's too many people going on them. Now, given that I've mentored hundreds of people into the industry through my resources and through my community, if I was going to go through it all again, what would I do differently? This is honestly, I'll tell you right now. #1, I'd be in two minds whether I actually needed to go on one. If I needed the structured learning, then I would go on one, but I don't think it's the only way in anymore. I think if you can develop yourself technically enough on your own, you don't need the bootcamp. #2, I'd focus on one specific area. So think about where you want to be in 2 years' time. Do you want to be a front-end developer, back-end developer, DevOps, data, whatever it is? Pick that goal and then work backwards from it. So #3 is pick your language and learning path based off the goal from #2. So if you wanted to be a front-end developer, then okay, you need to learn JavaScript, HTML, CSS, probably React and Next.js. Those would be the languages that I focused on. #4, I'd spend about 6 months learning those languages, nailing it down. Then #5, I'd build projects, start following it through tutorials, and then start building stuff off your own steam. The more you can evidence, the better it is for you. #6, network. Network as much as you can, because a lot of the jobs that I got were through effective networking, meeting recruiters, speaking to them, inviting them to my events. And #7, just understand that it's going to take time. It might take you a year to find a job. On average, the people who work with me, it's about 6 months. But it can take longer than that if you don't have the focus or know what to expect in an interview or how to write your CV. Where do I see myself going in the next 2, 3, 4 years? Honestly, I've always enjoyed the people side of it. So I think with this job, I'm probably going to stick here. I really like the company and the people for another year or two, develop this enterprise level projects because it's a capstone project that I think will put a lot of value onto my CV, but onto me as a developer. And then I'll probably be looking to move into some type of management. I'd love to move into a head of engineering or a CTO type role. That's always been sort of an ambition of mine, where I could sort of develop on a higher level the people roadmap and have an impact on people's careers. If you have any questions about my career and what I've done so far, then by all means ask them in the comments, because I've probably not covered everything you want to know.